Welcome, friends. Hope you're doing well. Julian had to take a last-minute flight because of her school prom and graduation party. Due to the Christmas holidays, all tickets of reliable airlines were already sold out. Now they were left with only one option: Lanza Airlines. Julianne's father had warned many times not to travel with this airline. He said it was a very poor and unsafe airline, but they needed to reach home urgently, and there was no other option left. So her mother booked the tickets with this airline. So what was the real issue, friends? At that time, this airline had a very bad reputation. People used to joke in Spanish, de lanza, lanza de panza, which roughly meant Lanza crashes belly first. The situation was so bad that several Lanza planes had crashed in the previous few years. And this particular aircraft was Lanza's last operational plane, a turboprop aircraft, Lockheed Model L-188 Electra. This plane was originally designed to fly over deserts. Its wings were not flexible like modern aircraft and were tightly attached to the body. Because of this design, the plane could not handle turbulence well, and it had already been removed from service in the United States years earlier. The passengers on this flight had no idea that this aircraft was not meant to fly over mountains. Yet this flight was being flown over the Andes mountain range. Then disaster struck when lightning hit the aircraft. Julianne was sitting in the second last row, seat number 19F, which was a window seat. The entire row of 3 seats broke off and separated from the plane. Because Julianne had her seatbelt fastened, she remained attached to her seat and began falling from a height of 10,000 feet, still strapped to it. What happened next was truly one of the most unbelievable miracles in human history. Julianne fell through the air along with her seat. Compared to the noise of the plane and the screams of passengers, now she could only hear the loud rushing sound of the wind. The pressure of the wind forced the seatbelt so tightly into her stomach that it became difficult for her to breathe. Below her was the dense Amazon rainforest. The trees were so thick that the ground was not visible at all. It looked like a field of broccoli. While still falling, Julianne lost consciousness in midair. When she regained consciousness, she found herself lying on the forest floor. The date was 25 December, Christmas morning. It had rained all night, soaking her clothes in mud, and she had remained unconscious the entire night. After waking up, she tried many times to stand, but every time she attempted it, she would immediately pass out again. After several attempts, she somehow managed to stay conscious and finally stood up. That's when she realized her injuries. Her collarbone was broken, her knee was badly sprained, and she had wounds on her right shoulder and left calf. One eye was completely swollen shut, and from the other she could see only a thin line. Her eyesight was already weak, and now her glasses were lost. One sandal was missing, and she had also suffered a concussion. But a big question arises here. How did she survive such a fall? There were 3 miraculous reasons behind her survival. The first was powerful updrafts, strong winds moving upward from the ground due to the storm. These winds slowed down her falling speed. The second reason was that the row of seats was spinning rapidly while falling. It spun so fast that it acted like helicopter blades, further reducing the speed of descent. The third reason was the dense canopy of Amazon rainforest. Thick leaves and vines created a net-like structure that worked like a cushion. This prevented her from hitting the ground directly. Luck also played a crucial role. The direction she fell, the tree she landed on, and the position of her body during the fall all mattered. Even after all these factors, surviving was extremely rare. You can understand this from the fact that no other passenger on the plane survived. But for Julianne, the real danger had only just begun. She was completely alone in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. She moved her arms and legs and called out for her mother, but there was no response. The jungle was filled only with the sounds of frogs, insects, and birds. The good news was that the Amazon jungle was not entirely new to Julianne. She was not an ordinary city girl. She had spent 3 years of her life at the Panguana research station with her zoologist parents. She knew which animals were poisonous, which plants were dangerous, and what to do in emergencies. She knew that in such a situation, even while injured, panic would only worsen things. Thinking clearly was essential. After resting for a few hours, her condition improved enough that she could walk properly. The first thing she did was search for her mother and other passengers, shouting loudly, "Where are you, Mom?" But no one replied. Occasionally she could hear rescue helicopters flying overhead, but the jungle was so dense that it was impossible for them to spot her. She realized she was alone and would have to survive on her own. The two most immediate needs for survival were water and food. Using her presence of mind, she drank water droplets collected on leaves to quench her thirst. Then she started searching for food. Many people believe that dense rainforests have plenty of edible food, but this is actually a misconception. The Amazon forest is so thick that sunlight barely reaches the ground, so very little grows there. Only palm fruits grow at heights of about 20 meters, and climbing trees in her condition was extremely risky. She found mushrooms but suspected they might be poisonous, so she did not touch them. Later, she found a box of Italian fruitcake from the plane wreckage, but it had been ruined by the rain. After walking a little further, she found a packet of candies from the plane. Only 30 candies. She decided to ration them carefully, eating only a few candies per day. She also had a wristwatch gifted by her grandmother. The next decision was very difficult. Juliane knew that if she wanted to survive, she had to keep moving until she found human settlement. But she didn't know which direction to go. She wandered around the crash site for hours. Then she heard the sound of dripping water. Searching for the source, she found a small stream emerging from the soil between bushes. This was her first ray of hope. Her father had taught her that if you ever get lost in a jungle, follow flowing water. A small stream leads to a larger stream, which becomes a river, and eventually rivers lead to human settlements. This was her only strategy, so she followed the water. In the terrifying Amazon jungle, home to 8-foot-long alligator-like creatures, venomous snakes, spiders, and countless dangerous species, a 17-year-old girl was walking alone. She didn't know where she was going or if she would ever meet anyone. She only knew one thing: keep following the water. Although this sounds simple, water does not always flow through easy paths. Fallen trees, dense bushes, and slippery rocks blocked the way. The jungle was so dense that she had to push through vegetation to move forward. Before she could go much further, darkness began to fall. She checked her watch. It was 6 p.m. The biggest challenge so far lay ahead: surviving the night in the jungle. At night, wild animals can attack easily. Juliane knew she needed a safe sleeping spot, preferably with a tree or rock behind her to prevent attacks from behind. Her father had taught her how to start a fire by rubbing stones and wood, but heavy rain made everything wet, and lighting a fire was impossible. Due to exhaustion and injuries, she fell into a deep sleep. Thankfully, she had chosen a relatively safe place. The next day, she woke up with almost no energy. But she knew that survival meant continuing to move. With broken glasses, she couldn't see far, so taking shortcuts wasn't possible. She had to keep walking. Along the way, she encountered a terrifying spider, the Goliath bird eater, the largest spider in the world. It is large enough to eat small birds. Juliane knew it was best to keep her distance. She continued walking along the water all day, finding no new food. On the third day, she found the first piece of plane wreckage: a turbine, blackened on one side. Rescue planes could still be heard overhead once or twice a day, but she had no way to signal them. By evening, her watch stopped working. On the fourth day, she saw vultures circling, a sign of dead bodies nearby. She soon found a row of plane seats with 3 passengers still strapped in. They had hit the ground head first with such force that their heads were buried 3 feet into the soil, legs pointing upward. It was a horrifying sight. For a moment, Juliane was paralyzed with fear. One of the bodies was a woman, and she feared it might be her mother. Slowly, she moved closer and used a stick to look at the feet. She noticed nail polish on the toes. This gave her some relief, as her mother never wore nail polish. She searched the area for more bodies or injured passengers, but found nothing except metal debris. She then continued moving forward, following the water along its path. In this way, days kept passing by. She did not find anything else to eat. Her sense of time slowly disappeared. She no longer knew what time it was or which day it was. All days felt the same, and all nights felt the same. Mentally, she had become so weak that she could no longer remember how many days she had been wandering in the jungle. Inside her mind, Juliane kept repeating only one thing again and again: follow the water, follow the water. Slowly, the small flowing stream turned into a larger stream, and that larger stream eventually became a small river. But after so many days, her hunger had become completely unbearable. All the candies she had were finished. She thought about eating the inner stem of palm trees, but she had no knife or sharp object to cut them open. She also had nothing to catch fish with, nor any way to boil roots to eat them. Instead of food, she decided to survive by drinking river water. The minerals in the water made her feel full for a short time, but soon the hunger returned. Gradually, she became extremely weak and hopeless. She had no idea how many more days she could survive like this in the jungle. On the 6th day, Juliane heard the sound of a bird. The moment she heard it, she suddenly felt a surge of energy. Hearing the sound, she started walking faster. It was the call of a hoatzin bird, a sound she had heard before. She knew that this bird builds its nest near open water, close to large rivers. This meant a big river was very close. After walking a little further, she saw that her stream was merging into a river. However, reaching the riverbank was extremely difficult because the mouth of the stream was blocked by logs and thick bushes, making it impossible for her to cross from there. So she turned back and walked through the jungle to bypass the barrier. This took several hours. Eventually, she finally reached the large river. The river was about 30 feet wide. After walking for so many days in the jungle, this was the first time Juliane saw a clear, open sky. But even here, there were still no humans anywhere in sight. For a long time, she had been hearing the sound of rescue planes, but they always sounded very far away. Then, after about half an hour, one plane came very close. It flew directly overhead. Juliane became extremely excited. With great hope, she waved her hands and shouted toward the plane. But it did not help. Unfortunately, the pilot did not see her, and the plane flew away. Juliane sat there again with renewed hope, waiting for another plane to return so she could wave and shout again, but no other plane came. Even the distant sound of rescue aircraft eventually stopped. After several hours, she did not hear the sound again. Juliane realized what this meant. The rescue search operation had been officially called off. Once again, her courage began to break. Until now, her only goal had been to somehow reach the river. But after reaching it, she truly felt the weight of her loneliness. For thousands of kilometers, the jungle was completely uninhabited. No one was coming to save her. She began to feel that her chances of survival were zero. She was just about to give up when she remembered something her father had told her. Where there is a river, there are people. Remembering this, she motivated herself again, believing that if she kept walking along the river, she would eventually reach humans. With this last hope, she kept moving forward. Days continued to pass, but with each passing day, her condition worsened. Flies laid eggs on the wounds on her arm. The maggots hatched and began eating their way deep into her flesh. Normally, maggots can only be removed using alcohol or kerosene, but Juliane had neither. She only had a silver ring. She removed the ring and tried to pull the maggots out, but they had burrowed very deep into her skin. She became afraid that if the wounds got infected, she might even have to lose her arm. In addition, the skin on her upper back was badly burned. It had started peeling off, and blood was coming out from there as well. There was nothing she could do about these problems, so she did the only thing she could: keep moving forward along the river. After some time, she realized that instead of walking along the riverbank, she could jump into the river and let the current carry her. She jumped into the river and began floating along with the flow. After drifting for hours, she saw what looked like the roof of a house and then heard the sound of chickens. But none of this was real. She was hallucinating. As darkness approached, she would come out of the river to take shelter, and as soon as morning came, she would jump back into the river again. She repeated this for several days, even though it was extremely dangerous. One day, while she was lying near the riverbank, a large female alligator began approaching her in an attacking position. Once again, Juliane's jungle knowledge saved her. She knew that this type of alligator does not attack in water. She immediately entered the river and floated away with the current. After repeating this process for many days, the cold water made her even weaker. Food was still a major problem. She tried to catch frogs to eat, but she had become so weak that she could not even catch them. While walking along the riverbank, she later encountered deer-like animals. This was not a good sign. Juliane knew that such animals are usually not found near human settlements. By the 10th day, she had almost completely lost hope. She had very little left to motivate herself. She genuinely felt that she would not survive. Another full day passed, drifting in the river. The sun set, and darkness began to fall. She came out of the river and lay down on the sandy riverbank to rest. Then she saw something, a large boat standing in front of her. She wondered if this was another hallucination. She could not believe her eyes. She rubbed her eyes and looked again. The boat was still there. She rubbed her eyes 3 times. Each time the boat was still visible, was still. She swam a little closer and touched the boat. Only then did she realize that it was real. Next to the boat, she saw a small path going uphill. Using every bit of strength left in her body, Juliane climbed the path. At the top, there was a hut. When she reached the hut and looked inside, she saw no one. There were no people there. But inside the hut, there was gasoline. Juliane used a small tube to take out the gasoline and poured it directly onto the wound on her arm to remove the maggots. The pain was unbearable, because the maggots tried to burrow deeper into her body to escape the gasoline. Slowly, the maggots began coming out. As she removed them one by one and counted, she realized there were 30 maggots embedded in her wound. Juliane decided to stay inside the hut and wait for someone to arrive. Night passed and then morning came, but no one arrived. She thought about trying to move forward again, but her body had no strength left. She spent the entire next day sitting there, exhausted and hopeless. That evening, as darkness began to fall, she heard voices, human voices. At first, she thought she might be hallucinating again. But then she saw 3 people emerge from the jungle. When they saw Juliane, they stepped back in fear. A white girl in torn clothes, with swollen eyes and wounds all over her body. They thought she might be a demon. In the Amazon jungle, people have many mythological beliefs. They believe in Yakumama, a giant anaconda known as the Mother of Water, almost like a forest deity. They had heard many stories, and seeing Juliane in this condition made them believe she was Yakumama. Gathering all her remaining strength, Juliane spoke in Spanish and said, "I am the survivor of the Lanza plane crash. My name is Juliane." They could not believe her. They told her that everyone in that plane crash had died, according to the news. If she truly survived that crash, then she was the only survivor. Hearing this, Juliane's heart sank. She realized this meant her mother had not survived. Throughout her journey, the hope that her mother was alive had kept her motivated. Accepting her mother's death was extremely difficult. It was another miracle that these 3 men appeared that evening. They were actually traveling elsewhere and had decided to stop at the hut only because of heavy rain. They gave Juliane clothes to wear and farina, a type of roasted flour, to eat. They cleaned her wounds and removed the maggots. 2 more people arrived later. The next day, they took Juliane to a village. When villagers saw her for the first time, they were terrified because the blood vessels in her eyes had burst, making her eyes completely red. Her wounds were cleaned and disinfected in the village. From there, she was taken by plane to Juliane Koepcke, where doctors provided proper medical treatment. A few days later, Juliane safely returned home alive. In total, she fought death for 11 days, surviving alone in the dense Amazon rainforest. This incredible survival story shocked the entire world. A 17-year-old girl fell from 10,000 feet, landed in the middle of the Amazon jungle, and survived alone for 11 days. Juliane came out of the Amazon jungle, but the jungle never left her. Later, she studied biology at the University of Kiel and became a renowned zoologist, just like her mother. She dedicated her entire life to conserving the Amazon rainforest and its wildlife. After her father passed away in 2000, she became the director of the Penguana Research Station, the same station her parents had founded. As of 2025, Juliane Koepcke is a famous zoologist, 71 years old, and still alive. In a 2010 interview, she revealed that for many years after the incident, she suffered from nightmares. She repeatedly saw the people who had been on the plane that day. One thought always haunted her. Why did I survive? Why only me? Perhaps the answer lies in her courage and determination. When investigative teams later reached the crash site, they discovered that 14 more people had survived the crash initially, but they died while waiting for rescue. Juliane survived because she used her knowledge, her courage, and the lessons taught by her parents. She created her own path and never gave up until her last breath. That is what made the difference between her and the others. This story teaches us a powerful lesson. No matter how difficult life becomes, remember Juliane's story. Our problems will never be as extreme as hers. If a 17-year-old girl could survive such unimaginable hardship, then you can overcome your challenges too.